Hi everybody, welcome to week, I don't know, 7 maybe 8, 6, I don't know. Welcome to Keyboard Harmony. We are just about halfway through the semester in terms of how many videos you need to turn in. We are working on video 7 this week, but just so you know, the video is not due until March 14th because next week is our midterm performances. So next week you want to come to class, and if you can't make it to class, you need to email me beforehand so that you're not docked for not attending. So make sure you let me know if there's a valid reason you can't be there in class. And another thing is, if you are not playing live, you need to submit your recording just like usual of your performance. Make sure it's submitted on time, otherwise you just don't want to have issues with that. And if you are playing live, please comment on the assignment, and instead of turning something in, just comment and say I'm playing live. Okay, I think that's everything. Oh no, the other thing is, if you haven't already received approval from me for your midterm performance piece, please email me by the end of today so that I know that everybody has something picked out and that you're working on it. Okay, so let's jump in. So great news, we are not doing a whole bunch of technique this week. Instead, we're focused on transposition and reading chords, and then you have this nice little écossais by Schubert. So we'll start with the Schubert. So this is page 254 for video 7. The main thing that I would look for with this is be aware of what chords you're playing in your left hand, and then practice the fingering for any of these scale type things. They repeat a lot of times. These have written out repeats, so you're going to play the same thing multiple times. In fact, this scale, it's a D major scale starting on C sharp. You play that 4 times. So make sure you have a comfortable fingering. This fingering works really well so that you can get through this. I'll walk you through the chords really quickly. So we're in the key of G major because we have 1 sharp, and our first chord is a G major chord. So we have a 1 chord, 4, 1, 1, 1. This is, it's just a 5/7 chord. Oh, it has a natural because there's a C sharp up here. Sorry, that natural was throwing me off. This is a 5/7 chord in a different, it's in root position, so it's not the usual inversion that you're used to, but it's all the same notes. So just be aware that's a 5/7 chord. This is a 1 chord in second inversion, and then back to that 5/7, and then again a 1 chord, but this time in root position. And then you play the exact same 2 lines, 1 4 1 1 1 5 7 1 5 7 5 7 1. And then here it gets a little bit different, but you do have a pattern going on in the left hand. So both voices, the top voice and the bottom voice, are moving in when you move from this measure to this measure. So watching those for those kind of patterns can be helpful. Hopefully this looks familiar because it is exactly the same as line 2. And then you play this again, which you've already played, and then you play line 2 again. So essentially you have 3 lines of material. So learn line 1, learn line 2, and then, what is this, line 5 or something? So make sure you can play starting in measure 1, measure 5, and measure 17. And if you can do that, you can play the whole thing. It just repeats a lot. I would suggest, a lot of you have more experience at the piano, and this is relevant for everyone, but especially for people who are not concerned with just learning notes and rhythms. Take full advantage of articulations. So we have accents, we have staccatos, we have sforzandos, and then you also want to watch your dynamics. So everyone should be doing that, but especially people with more experience. So I will play this for you. I'm going to slow it down to 100, And here we go with Echo Says.
Set, go.
Okay, so as you probably just heard, so I slowed this down 20 BPM. It still is moving quite quickly because of all of the eighth notes. So I would say probably the slowest you should slow it down and still be able to play with very few mistakes or no mistakes. I would say don't go slower than 75. At that point, it's a little bit to the point of sight reading sounding. Even if you've practiced it, you should be able to play it faster than 75. Yeah, watch your fingerings. That's kind of my big thing for this one, is just be aware of those fingerings. Okay, let's take a look at the next page. Okay, so we're doing an improvisation. It's in 3/4 in the key of E minor. We know it's E minor because we have one sharp, but we start with an E minor chord instead of a G major chord. So they have given you all of the Roman numerals for the chords. So we're looking at a minor 1, minor 4, major 5. This does say just 5 instead of 5/7. I'm going to go ahead and say play a 5/7 on any 5 chord you want. I think that's just nice, personally. But, you know, if you do a 5, that's great. We have a major 6, minor 1, minor 2 in first inversion, a 5/7, and then a 1. So I'm not going to be really picky about inversions. In fact, I'm playing all of these chords except for the one chord in an inversion, just so I can stay in closest hand position. I personally would rather play the 2/6 chord in an inversion or in root position, just because it's easier, but because it does say inversion, we'll do that. One thing I want to point out, 2 chords in minor keys are actually diminished chords, not just minor. So if that's something throwing you off because you're like, wait, this is diminished, not minor, it's supposed to be diminished. This is just not indicated here. It just says minor. Okay, so a waltz pattern or waltz style accompaniment, you're going to have the root and then the remaining 2 notes on beats 2 and 3. And you can play it however you want. If you want to get really fancy and add some slurs, or if you want it all broken or non-legato, whatever you want to do is fine. Okay, so I will walk you through these chords so you can see what I'm doing. So I'm going to just play them blocked just for now so that you can see what I'm doing. So I'm playing a 1 chord in root position, my 4 chord. I'm going to play in second inversion because this is what we've practiced in class and it's really easy. And then I'm going to play the 5/7. Same thing as what we've done before. Next is a 6 chord, which I don't remember doing personally in anything before this, but I could be crazy. A 6 chord in E minor is going to be a C major chord, so I already have 2 fingers on part of C major, so I'm just going to add a C on top. So I'm playing a 6 chord or a C major chord in first inversion, and then going back to the 1 chord is really easy. So again, the 6 chord looks like this, and then the 1 chord. And then it says to play the 2 chord in first inversion, which means we're going to have A on the bottom, A, C, F sharp, and then, let's see, I'm going to go back here, just because that's easier for me. That's a huge leap, though. What am I doing? Okay. Here's what I'm gonna say. So in measure 6, where it says to play the 2 chord in first inversion, I'm going to say you can play it in root position if you want. Otherwise, you're all over the place, which is doable. But if you want to just root position, that's fine with me. I'm going to play it the way it says to, though. Okay, so with improvisation, personally, I would prefer not to play with piano marble. But the danger not playing with piano marble is you are more responsible for playing in the correct meter, which we're going to be really picky about grading, because when you're improvising, many of you will improvise with other people, so you need to do it in the correct meter. It also sounds really awkward on your own if you're playing an incorrect meter, especially when you're doing a waltz style. So we're going to be really picky about that. But for now, I'm not going to play with piano marble, just so I can go really slowly and kind of talk you through what I'm doing. So I'm going to start with an improvisation that is all chord tones. So that means whatever chord my left hand is playing, my right hand is only going to use one of those. Okay, so it'll sound something like this. Starting with a 1 chord, and then a 4 chord, 5/7, and then a 6, 1. That's a 2/6. Okay, so I mostly did chord tones in that 5/7. I had a suspension because it just sounds really nice. Okay, now if I wanted to get, if you want to get a little bit fancier and maybe you don't feel comfortable with improvisation, something I do is use passing tones to get from one chord tone to another chord tone. So it'd be something like this. So that can be kind of a simple way to make your improvisation sound a little bit more decorated, is by using passing tones or neighbor tones to get through this improvisation. But what I said before about just playing chord tones still sounds really nice. Something I want to mention is when you are doing improvisation, if you make a mistake, pretend it was on purpose and just keep going. Treat it like it was an intentional suspension, or even if it's out of the key, like do it and just do it like you meant it, because there really are no mistakes when you do improv. So you just want it to sound as natural and as mistake-free as possible by not treating mistakes like mistakes. Okay, so the next page is another improvisation. This is 255B. We're in the key of F major because we have 1 flat and we start with an F major chord. On the previous page, we had Roman numerals, right? So these symbols to indicate chords. For this one, they're doing lead sheet, so the chord names. And remember, when you're doing this, the slash means that this second part is the note that will be the bass or the lowest that you play in the chord, and the first indicates, what chord you're playing and what quality. So this accompaniment style is called Alberti Base, so this is like a Mozartian style, and all it is you play the root, or you play the lowest, and then the highest, then the middle, then the highest. That's the pattern. So get used to playing that pattern. Like I said, lowest, highest, middle, highest, and then you just kind of alternate back and forth. Okay, so I'll start by playing all of these chords in blocked form, and I'll make this so you can see my hand. Okay, so we're starting with F major and then D minor slash F. So that's going to be our minor 6 chord. And then B flat slash F. That's our 4 chord. And then C7 slash E, that's our 5/7. Back to our F. And then a G minor over B flat. So that's your 2/6. And then C7, that's your 5/7. And then F. So again, with this 2/6, getting from here is kind of difficult. Do it if you want, otherwise play root position chords. Okay, now I'm going to play the whole left-hand accompaniment in Alberti Base style so that you can hear just that. So here I am starting with F. We're in 4/4. You have to do this Alberti Base in 4/4. Well, you don't have to, but anyway, this style works really well in 4/4. Okay, here we go. F, D minor, B major, C7, F major, G minor, C7, F. And then they changed the pattern at the end, which I think is kind of weird. Do whatever you want there. Okay, so that's how this Alberti Base will work. I'll give 2 examples of improv. I'll start first with only chord tones. Sorry, okay. I wasn't even ready to go. I'm going to try that again. Oh my gosh, I keep doing the wrong one. Okay, so we have F major, D minor. Okay, so I need to remember that these 2 remain the same and my top note is moving up. Okay. Let's do this again. This is a hard one for me. Okay, I will do this again. This time a little bit more decorated, using passing tones, neighbor tones, suspensions, whatever. I don't know. We'll see. Okay, so spend the time that you need on that to feel comfortable playing. And I'm hoping you guys noticed I mostly stayed within like a 5 or 6 note range. It is completely possible to play all of this with using just these 5 notes. So I'll give you an example of that in case you want that. So you don't have to get crazy for it to be improv, is basically what I'm getting at. Okay, we're on to page 256. We're going to transpose this on the following page. I'm pretty sure. Yes, okay. So I want to take a look at this. So this is your Alberti Base. It's faster. It's 1/8 notes instead of quarter notes, but it's the same thing. So lowest, highest, middle, high, low, high, middle, high. So get used to the pattern. You're going to play it a lot. If you have the capability to print this off and do analysis, I would suggest that, but I'll walk you through it. So first half of measure 1. Well, first of all, we're in the key of D major. We know that because there are 2 sharps, and we're starting on a D major chord, plus the right hand also starts on tonic. So those are some good clues. Okay, so we start with a D major chord. I'm going to use Roman numerals. So we have a 1 chord, a 6 chord, and then a 2 chord. Okay, so that's the first 3 measures. Measure 4, 5, 7. Next measure, 1. Okay, measure 5, you have a 1 chord and then a 6 chord. measure 6, you have a 2 chord, measure 7, 5/7 chord, and then ending on a 1 chord. So being aware of all of those and how closely they're related can make this a lot easier to play. Sorry, my voice is getting all scratchy. With the right hand, you want to be really aware of what intervals you're playing. That can be really helpful. I would especially watch for large leaps, for example, this 6th, and watching the fingerings as a guide, but not as your, don't rely on it to get you through this. This is something I tell my students all the time. Just because you play finger number 1 and then finger number 2 does not mean the notes are right next to each other, right? This is a skip. So anyway, use those to your advantage, but don't rely on them. With the right hand, I already am set up to play the first 5 notes. Just to make that a little bit more simple for myself. And then I notice that I switch fingers to play that thing. I'm going to play the same thing. So that was measure 5 and 6, and then 7 and 8. So this is what we call a question and answer phrase, or I'm going to mix it up. Antecedent and consequent. I'm sorry if I mixed that up. But, yeah. It's not a very good question and answer because the first 4 bars already resolve to tonic, which is typically what we're looking for in a final phrase. Anyway, what I'm getting at is they both start the same but end differently. Okay. Sorry, I got a little bit off on a tangent. Okay, I'm going to slow this down to 90 just because it's a nice round number. And I will play this for you. Page 256 in D major.
1, 2, set, go.
Okay, that was a little bit fast for the improv or for the transposition. I'm definitely going to slow this down. I'll give you a bit of a hint on this transposition, something that makes this a little bit easier. We're transposing from D major to C major. So if you are playing along and you know where you are, but you can't remember what interval you're leaping to or from or something like that, just read a note lower than whatever is going on here. C major is also easy in this case because you don't have any accidentals to worry about. There are none in the key signature and there are none in the melody or the accompaniment. So that makes that a little bit easier. I'm going to slow this down because I have a really strong feeling that I'm going to need to do it slower. So I'm going to play this at 80. This is moderato transposed to C major.
1, 2, set, go.
So something I'm going to go back to the original. I talked about leaps, but also being aware of just when you're taking steps or when you're repeating a note, especially when you're ending an idea and beginning a new idea, but they start and end with the same note, end and start with the same note. That can be helpful. With something like this is simply a 5-finger pattern from dominant, so the 5th note of the scale, down to tonic, or the 1st note. I would be watching that just because even if I mess this up, I can feel pretty strongly that I could get this. So that's something else I would look for. Okay, so we had Alberti Base accompaniment on the last transposition. On this one, we have a waltz style. So that's where, again, you play the lowest note of the chord and then the remaining notes on beats 2 and 3. Okay, so let's talk through these harmonies. You're starting first. We're in the key of F major, starting on an F major chord and then a 6th chord. So, oh my gosh, excuse me. When you go from a 1 chord to a 6 chord or an F major to, a D minor chord, the 2 lowest notes remain the same and it's just the highest note that changes. Okay, so anyway, we're going 1, major 1, minor 6, minor 2, 5, 7, which is a dominant 7 chord, to minor 2, 5, 7, 1, 1. So this is a little unconventional to go from the dominant to a 2 chord, because the 2 chord should go to the dominant. Anyway, this is a little weird. I played through it and I was like, okay, that feels a little strange. So just so you know, that was my experience. With the right hand, I noticed that all of this remains in one hand position. So I can start with finger number 1 on 4. Wow, finger number 1 on F. And I can play all of this without moving my hand, being aware that there's a B flat to prepare for. This, I do have to move my hand, and then there's this little tricky figuration right here of fingering to help me get back from scale degree 6 down to scale degree 1. So just being aware that this is a different spot than this can be helpful. Okay, I'll play this one for you. So this is F major, page 256.
1, set, go.
That was a lot easier to play without a bunch of eighth notes. Okay, so for the next page, we're transposing to G major. The main thing to watch out for is when you play in G major, your 5-7 chord is going to have an F sharp in there. Other than that, you play no F sharps while you are playing either your right hand or your left hand. I'm going to slow this again down to 85. I would say 85 was pretty slow, just a quarter note, so I would say maybe don't go any lower than like 80. Any slower than 80. Okay, here we go, G major. Wish me luck.
1, set, go.
I changed the fingering when I played this in G major. Not consciously, it just kind of happened. I'm not going to be picky about fingering on any of these things, but just, well, except for the scale that you play earlier, mostly because, you know, it will be hard to do if you're doing something weird. But everything else, I'm not going to be too concerned with fingering, but be aware that using consistent fingering can make your life a whole lot easier. I believe that's everything for this week. So you have a lot of transposition, a lot of improvisation. I would suggest, same as always, practice a little bit every day instead of a bunch on one day. And when you do practice, you know, I think some of you are already doing this, but it might be a good idea to record your assignment on different days so you can really focus on one thing and then move on to something else. If you're not doing that, I would highly suggest you practice everything a little bit every day and just kind of make a plan for how to get through all the material and be able to play it really well. Because like I said recently, within the last couple of weeks, we will ask you to resubmit if it seems like you have not had a chance to practice, and if it sounds like that, we want it to sound like you've worked on it. So make sure you're working on that so you don't have to resubmit anything. I saw a lot of improvement last week. People have really taken my advice and following fingerings. If you have not, please take my advice for following fingerings. That's everything I have for you today, and I will see you guys next week for the midterm.